Stephanie, can you do attendance?
Becky Beisel.
Here.
Brian Davis.
Present.
Scott Gergen.
Here.
Lisa Hadeen.
Here.
Dave Pemble.
Here.
Stephanie Malm. Here. Kelsey Waits.
Here. All right, so first up is approving the agenda for tonight. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next is approval of the minutes from the September 23rd regular board meeting and the meetings from the October 23rd special board meeting.
So move.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. So first up, announcements and recognitions. So first, thank you to everyone who's on tonight and whoever's watching from home, and just welcome to the board meeting. All right, now you're up.
Awesome. So I'm excited tonight. We have Kim Hoff and Melissa Schill here with us, and they have some really cool people to share with you. They are members of our peer helper group. And with such a focus on mental health and helping one another, we thought that it would be really a good thing for you as a board and for the community to hear about what peer helpers is and how our kids are helping one another. So Melissa and Kim, I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you, and we're really excited to be here too and have such great representatives from our program. I'm Melissa Schill. I'm the school psychologist at the high school. Kim Hoff and I will each take a moment to explain a little bit about the basics of the Peer Helper program, and then we have our student representatives here, and they are each going to tell you a little bit about some different features of the program, and then we're happy to answer any questions you might have. The Peer Helper program has been active in Hastings High School since the fall of 2013. And for those that are from our community or been around a while, that you may remember followed a year of really a series of tragic events in the Hastings High School community that really shook up the school community. It shook up the entire Hastings community. And so we were really at a time where we were reevaluating and looking at what we had in place for supports and just searching for what else could we bring to the school to help support students. Kim Hoff had come from a history as a teacher in the Hudson School District and was aware of and really felt positive about a program called the Peer Helper Program. And so she suggested that, and Mike Johnson approved it, and we've been in place since then. The premise of Peer Helper Program is that we recognize that regardless of whether there are adults available to talk to, kids talk to kids, and that's the way it's always been. It probably will always be that way. That's just normal developmental process. And so that it makes sense to provide training to students in active listening skills, problem solving skills, teach them about mental health and about when they need to seek adult help and when they need to encourage their peers to seek adult help for serious situations that are beyond what kids should be helping kids with. And really, so then once they're trained, and training is ongoing, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But really the idea is that they use these skills in their natural environment. So in their classes, in their sporting events, in their clubs, when they're chatting on the phone, when they're on the school bus, it's just their natural world where they're already being approached and talking to kids about issues, that they have a really strong foundation of how to be a good listener and how to guide someone through a problem that they're having. The advisors, Kim and I have advised it since that year, and we are there to provide the training and then be ongoing guidance for them, because sometimes they get into things that they recognize as they need some extra help with or some consultation, and we're there to provide that guidance for them. A nice feature that the group has really taken over too is that the group has really taken on some different outreach and education to the entire school body. And so what's happened is several times a year, they will have a topic that they're presenting, either a booth at lunchtime, or it's coming on the announcements and sharing some information, or it's visiting classrooms. And some of those topics have been like a yearly stress management coping skills kind of information. We've talked about healthy relationships and even kind of gotten into prevention of domestic violence within, because we know that those things happen even in the teen years in relationships. Destigmatizing mental illness has been an important focus. And so again, we're, as educators, we're telling kids about these things, but it's so powerful for them to hear from their peers some of these same lessons. The program is it's 2 advisors, and it really stays with about 28 students, grades 9 through 12. And they're selected based on kind of a combination of some things. Peer recommendations is a part of it, and students apply to be in the program. We've been overwhelmed with applications. We unfortunately can't accommodate the size of program that we would have enough volunteers to staff. And that's due, Kim will get into a little bit more about funding. We just don't have enough resources to really manage a bigger program. But we've really just been honestly thrilled with how great this program has been, beyond our expectations. And I mean, the caliber of the students we get, and their just really capacity to do this is beyond anything I thought would be possible. The response from the student body you never know how something like this will go. And the response has been just incredibly positive. The support from teachers has really been there, and we've made it our mission to make sure teachers do understand how to connect kids they might spot in class who maybe need someone to talk to and might need a friend with our kids. And yeah, so we've just been really pleased with the impact that it's had. And personally, I love being an advisor of this program. It's really one of my highlights of my job. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Hoff. She's going to talk more about some of the data that we've collected and explain how we're funded.
Thanks again for having us and allowing us to talk about this passion project of Melissa and I. We often talk about how it's our favorite part of our job, working with these kids. It's just super rewarding. We are just pleasantly pleased every year how the program grows. We started out, really fresh and new, and getting the word out to students. It was a slow burn. Understanding what peer helpers do, what we can offer them, kids trusting in the program and in the process that it is confidential, and that these peer helpers sign a confidentiality contract. They sign a no chemical use contract, that they are going to be confidential unless they feel like they need to reach out to an adult. So really with that, it just grew, and students started to trust that this is a program that they can use and that other kids use. Our students are great at promoting it. They go into health classes, both Health 9 and Health 10, and give a presentation on what peer helpers do and how to contact a peer helper. So our numbers have grown and grown. We keep data at our monthly meetings. We have the students fill out a contact report. They keep track of how many student contacts that they have. They don't keep track of names or confidential information. They just simply say, I had 20 contacts this month. 10 were about relationships, 6 were about school stress, and we keep that data. And we last year were up to over 3,000 contacts in a year with students, which every year our numbers sort of doubled and doubled and doubled as we've gone. This is our 8th year, so we're really proud of that. And what we do with that data, luckily, we've been super fortunate to get funding through Allina. When Melissa and I started this program, we knew that the trainings that we wanted to do were going to cost some money. We go off-site, we go to a camp, we do a retreat. We really get these kids in the mindset of a training retreat off-site with a trainer. And that's not cheap, and it's not free. And we didn't have a budget when we created this program. So we were lucky to partner with Allina, their charitable contributions. And we've been fortunate enough to build up that grant to $10,000 a year. So another thing, we've partnered with Allina in their Change to Chill promotion, their teen stress relief program. And we had some chill ambassadors or chill champions, I think they called them, but they were interns. Simon Hedin was one of them. Ruby Karras last year was another one. And they had an internship over the summer to design a chill space in our high school. we luckily had a small conference room that really was conducive to that kind of thing, and everyone was on board with it. And so they got a grant for $1,000 to deck out the chill space designed by teens on what would be good for teens to feel a place that they could relax and chill. And we set up these healthy boundaries and parameters about how you use the chill space and who uses the chill space, and it's a no phone zone, and we have all these things, and kids were incredibly receptive to it and respectful of it, and used it within the purpose of what it was used for. So that was just a neat thing last year. Unfortunately, with COVID, the chill space is sort of closed down for now, but too many soft surfaces to clean. So right now the chill space is sort of on reserve. But we are just really, really proud of the program. We're really proud of the kids, and it just it's because of the kids that this program is working. It's because of their confidentiality, their dedication to the program, their dedication to their fellow students. And I'm going to turn it over to them to help kind of explain some nuts and bolts of our program and how we do it. And I'm going to start with one of our leaders. We have two senior leaders this year, Blake Zach and Simon Hedin. I'm going to start actually with Blake. And Blake, do you want to talk about our mission statement and kind of what that means to us?
So our mission statement is: we are Hastings High School students who are ready to provide confidential support for those facing challenges. We are dedicated and ready to help students in need of a listener, encouragement, or support. And as Ms. Hoff had said, that confidentiality has to be broken when a student is going to hurt themselves or somebody else. We have the obligation to tell an adult at that point. But I think what our mission statement does is it really covers the broad spectrum of our program, which is providing that support and giving students privacy, but also having a little safety net with if a student is going to hurt themselves or somebody else. So.
Thank you, Blake. All right, Simon, do you want to speak to kind of how you guys are trained, and then not only the retreats, but our monthly training and some of those topics?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. So our training is such a huge part of our program because it kind of makes the difference between us as peer helpers compared to just being a good friend or a good teenager, because we're able to get some extra tools. And our training is kind of two-pronged. The first and probably the most important of that is the retreats that we do. We do a training retreat in the fall and in the spring, where we go up to Camp St. Croix up near Hudson, and we meet a trainer whose name's Mike. He's partners with Hazelden Betty Ford, and he takes us through about a day and a half of training, basically on how to fulfill our mission statement, which is to encourage and to support and to listen to our peers, and to do so in a confidential way. And that's a really huge part of our group, not only because of the training, but also because it helps us become more of a group and help us learn how to support each other, as well as other teens. And then the second prong of our training is at our monthly meetings, where, as Ms. Hoff was saying, we record our different meetings that we have with people. But each month we try to have a trainer come down and help us get more up-to-date information on anything. And in the past, we've had people come from NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They've talked about anxiety and depression, as well as grief and loss. We've also had someone come in and talk about suicide and self-harm. And I remember last year we had someone come in from the Harbor Shelter in Hastings and talk about healthy relationships, domestic abuse. And those trainings it's fantastic that we are able to get those trainings through the program, because it gives us the tools to help each other, and also to help the rest of the high school and to do what we can to make a difference. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of our training program. I'll kick it back to you, Ms. Hoff.
All right, thanks, Simon. All right, Kira Smallage. Kira's going to talk a little bit about the process. If you're a student and you feel like you want to talk to somebody, how do you talk to a peer helper? What do you need to do? Where do you go? Who do you ask? How do they find us? Oh, we can't hear you, Kira. We still can't hear you. It looks like you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Okay, Kira, we're going to let you figure that out. And we're going to kick it to Emma. Emma McClay is going to talk about what issues teens face. What are some of our most noted contacts when we collect our contact reports? What are some of our most the most popular topics that teens are turning to other teens about?
Thanks, Ms. Hoff. Hi, my name is Emma McClay. I'm a sophomore peer helper. I was also a peer helper last year. And then, as she said already, I'm going to talk about what's the most common topics are in peer helper sessions. Overall, the most common topics are relationships, like boyfriend and girlfriend, friendships, academic stress, depression, and anxiety. So that's just like overall everyone. And then personally, I get a lot about relationships and quite a bit about friendships as well. This month so far, I've had 35 overall. 9 of them have been relationships, 9 have been friendships, 6 have been school stress, 6 have been mental health illnesses, including depression and eating disorder or anxiety. And then I had 5 about sports. So I've had people come and talk to me about drugs and alcohol before, but typically it's not like them that are doing it, because then I would have to notify a teacher because that's endangering them. But people have came to me being concerned about their friends, but it's not as big as relationships or friendships at all. When we do have to contact an adult is when we think that they're going to endanger themselves or other people. And then another thing to remember is that we are not a 24/7 therapist, because we're obviously just kids. We do have training, but we can't offer advice or anything like that. We give them the tools to get to where they need to go. So I have had people that have tried to, not knowingly, but abuse that type of resource. And what I do, and I know a lot of other peer helpers also do, is just say, hey, like, I'm open on Wednesdays because neither of us have school. And then that's what I typically do. And then now I do it over FaceTime or Zooms because I try to avoid meeting in person. Yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Emma. All right. Kira, have you figured out your sound system?
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. So how does one get a peer helper? There's many different ways to get in contact with a peer helper. There's 3 main ways that we normally talk about though. A teacher can refer you. So let's say they see a student who's struggling or who just needs some help. They can come to us personally and say, hey, can you reach out to so-and-so? We think they could use your support. Another way is we personally reach out to these people, because some, although they may look like they're struggling and that they need help, they don't always admit it, or they don't want to be the first one to take that first step. And then always the classic where they personally come to you saying, hey, I have like an issue. Do you think you could listen or help me out? Sessions themselves can look a variety of different ways. There are some that are more formal, like the sit down, like we're talking face to face. Obviously that has switched since the coronavirus pandemic, and so a lot more are happening virtually now, but some even can happen over text. It all kind of depends on the situation and like the 2 parties that are involved. One big thing about peer helpers is we aren't here to give you advice. We can't choose what decisions you make and what you choose to do about a certain situation or a problem you're having. We help you identify a problem and we talk about possible steps to a solution, but we don't tell you like, this is what you need to do. We listen and can guide you kind of towards making the decision that you think is best fit for you. And we can give you feedback and let you know that we are always here for you, but ultimately it is up to you.
Another thing that we stress in the program is follow-up. That's our trainer, Mike, is really big on follow-up, whether that's just a pass by in the hall and hey, I've been thinking about you. How are things going since we talked last time? Or just a quick text. That's always good to follow up with people. I'm going to just mention one more thing, one more way that we make ourselves known is we have these posters all over the school. And it has our mission statement. And it's usually super cute pictures of each grade, like arm in arm and on piggybacks. And no, not this year. So we're going individual pictures this year. But we post these all over the school. They're in the nurse's office, in the bathrooms, so people can identify. I can turn to any of these people. And a lot of kids just use the poster and go straight to, I see Emma, I see you're a peer helper. Can we talk after school? So the posters are actually a really great promotional tool for us. All right, Carlos. Carlos Chavez is one of our other sophomores, and he's going to just talk about how peer helping has changed a little bit here in 2020. And I'm kind of interested to hear, Carlos, what the mindset is of the average teenager these days and how you're connecting with people during a time when it's hard to connect.
All right, hi, nice to meet you guys. My name is Carlos Chavez. So for how peer helping has changed, it's definitely had to go more virtual since in-person contact really isn't, the most widespread thing that we're used to. So like Emma said, her contacts are through Zoom or FaceTime. We use virtual, conferences in order to outreach and talk to the people that need to talk to us. And it's been a little bit more strenuous on trying to get into contact with people because it needs to work at the exact time for both of you because our school is divided into cohort 1 and cohort 2, and we don't have school on Wednesday for both groups in-person school, my bad. So that's why it's nice to negotiate a meeting time so that it works for both parties, and that's just very important, like Emma said. And then the mindset that has been going on and through this whole quarantine thing is that there's a lot of academic stress involved in this year's pandemic, of course. Through online, some students don't adjust that well, so they need a little bit more of a push, and they just need to talk to someone about it because it's just nice to hear somebody repeat back what you're experiencing. In my personal opinion, that's what I sometimes need. And it's just, there's a lot more academic stress and relationship issues that are going more virtual that you need to try and solve or just at least guide people through because that's what we're experiencing in our pandemic.
Thank you, Carlos. All right, I think that's all we have presentation-wise, unless kiddos, do you have anything else to share, peer helpers? Anything else you want to add? Something I forgot?
Yes.
Yes.
So this year we've gotten more on social media. So I run the Instagram account, and I typically try to post either mental health informational posts or affirmations for people just to kind of let them know that we're still there and we're still helping, even though it is online. I think that this has been helping because there has been people like DMing us saying that they want to talk to a specific peer helper. And I think that this is a really nice tool that we have now and what we can expand on.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, and I think that is like a really important thing because right now, like during the whole pandemic and everything going on, mental health is a huge factor that we're like not always thinking about, but it's something that's impacting more and more teens these days. And it's just something that like needs to be in awareness. And I am getting personally, I'm getting a lot more contacts based on mental health, like especially since the pandemic, just because everyone is having these feelings of confusion or stress or just everything's kind of weighing down on them. So there's just more things to like throw into the mixing pot.
I do think these guys do an excellent job of helping destigmatize mental health. They are so open in talking about it, and like Emma, all your posts, it just makes it so like you're not alone, and it's okay to not be okay, and reach out. There's help for you. The message is really strong and really clear, and it just helps remove that stigma. Carols, did you want to share?
Sorry. What I just wanted to add was that our social presence online has definitely increased, and I think that people just seem more comfortable since we're getting our name out there to go towards us, and that's just very huge. I I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know that my contacts have definitely gone up since quarantine. It's just people that are in isolation definitely need to just spit their thoughts out and just explain their problems to people. And that's why we are a great system that is used for that, because then we can, help guide you while both being in isolation.
Yeah. Thanks, Karos. All right, Melissa, do you have anything else to add?
I know we need to stop, but I have to just say one last thing that I find really helpful, and I just think our profession, Kim and myself, is to have these students be able to inform us what are the trends. There was, probably about a year ago, we were hearing them say the vaping is just out of control, and it really helps. Sometimes we can't be as in touch with what the trends are and how kids are thinking and feeling and behaving as we'd like to be because we're adults. And so to have these guys, just give us a sense of what they are seeing and what concerns are popping up and things. I think really helps us as educators be able to be more aware and do our job better. So that's a really nice silver lining of this program too.
And I saw Simon had unmuted for a second there. So did you have something else to add too?
Oh yeah, it's just a little mini thing. So obviously, Kira mentioned that teens dealing with mental health problems, especially during the pandemic, anxiety and depression and isolation of those feelings have really gone up in teens. And as peer helpers, we've taken steps to try to not only get our program out there, but in our partnership with Change to Chill, we've done what we can to help get kids different resources that aren't necessarily just peer helpers. Alliance Change to Chill program has a fantastic website with a bunch of different resources for kids to help them just help build their resilience and to help them calm themselves down and relax and to try to just live in the moment. And we've done what we can to promote their website to teens as well. So not only are we there as a mental health resource for kids, but we also try to reach out and give people different resources that they can go check out. Because the more resources teens have, the more likely they are to use them. And then that really helps out our whole school because it helps everyone become a little bit more mentally strong and more capable. So yeah, that's the little thing I'd add.
Well, thank you so much for not only joining the meeting tonight, but for all of the work you're doing in the schools to get support to all of our students. And this is a really great program, and I'm glad that we have it. So thank you for kind of sharing everything with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So next up, we have our items for discussion, beginning with policies for our first reading. So the first policy is policy 419, the tobacco-free environment. Oops, I clicked the wrong button. All right. So do we have any questions on this policy or any changes that we're seeing? Lisa?
I would just suggest prior to the second reading or I would be curious to know if the policy committee discussed. I saw the ad was a couple comments on vaping and mandating some vaping education. I wondered if that shouldn't be expanded to tobacco use. Because vaping has been a significant issue for teens and preteens, but I think there's also kind of a snuff or snooze. I don't even know what it's called if you're a teen, but that'd be my only comment on that mandated education piece, if it should be vaping and other tobacco use.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, I'm not seeing anything. So the next policy to take a look at is policy 516, student medication. So we're there, Lisa?
I had a little bit of time the other day and I actually read these very closely. So I compared this one to our existing policy on student medication, and I had two questions. There's not a definition of the word drug, although the word drug gets used a lot throughout the policy, and I think that might be necessary. In our existing policy, we talk about dietary or herbal supplements are not covered. They're just not in there. And I think some clarity about that, either continuity of that's not going to be a drug that the school will dispense. And then one of the new pieces, and this is in paragraph 3K4, it talks about that the written statement from, or written agreement from the parents is not necessary for a drug which a minor can give, quote, effective consent. And I don't know what, I'm curious, what would an example of that be? A drug that a minor could give effective consent? Is that something like, I'm thinking bacitracin, you go to the nurse in a topical application, or so maybe just some either examples in the policy or a clarification of what that means, and if that too applies to a dietary or herbal supplement.
All right. I always appreciate your insight. I know you laugh when you raise your hand, but you always, notice very fine details. So I think that's great. All right, so we've got the notes written for when policy committee meets next. Now, are there any other thoughts on this one? All right. Next up is 536, gender inclusion policy. Are there any questions or comments on this one? Oh, Lisa's already, sorry, Lisa beat you to it, Scott.
Well, I'd be happy to go last, but I noticed that in the attachment, there was a comment, so I presume that this is still an ongoing discussion about, and I would agree that we might want to talk about, or not talk about like in here, but in the policy, clarify that will be in compliance with Minnesota State High School League policy, local, state, and federal statutes. And I'd also I would encourage the policy committee to talk about if there needs to be clarification of what process would be used and the degree to which legal guardians would be involved, or how they would engage in the identification.
Okay. All right, Scott.
Yeah, I read this policy as well, and being it's a new policy, I did some research with some other districts. I actually found a policy that I thought that was very, looked very polished and very well written, and that was the St. Louis Park has policy 536, and I would recommend that the policy committee take a look at that for definitions. They use the phrase terminology, and then their general statement of policy, I think, is just it's a bit more fluid. It takes into account, to Lisa's point, I'm reading here. It's provide all students the opportunity to participate in co-curricular and extracurricular activities in a manner consistent with their gender identity, including but not limited to intramural and interscholastic athletics, and in conformance with Minnesota State High School League rules and regulations where applicable. So I thought that was good. And then it also had a call out in here that it references other policies that need to be, that this policy applies to specifically. So it calls out like 102 equal education opportunity, 413 harassment and violence, 423 employee student relationships, 425 staff development, bullying prohibition, protection and privacy of pupil records, student sex non-discrimination, which is 522, hazing prohibition, et cetera, et cetera. 610 field trips, make sure that this applies to all students regardless of their gender identity or gender expression. So I just thought it was a very well written policy, and I don't know if the committee had seen other examples of this, or if this is boilerplate MSBA, or if, you know, how the sausage was made here.
So this one is St. Paul's policy. So there's only a handful of school districts in Minnesota that have a specific policy on it. And so one of the reasons this was actually brought up to the policy committee about a year and a half ago, with Superintendent Collins, and then it's just kind of been waiting. But this is really just to bring our policy in line with our practice that we're already doing. So we had pulled this from St. Paul, but there are a couple others that we looked at as well. Yeah,
I didn't run across St. Paul's. I did run across some in other states, and I avoided those simply because I don't know. I don't know how applicable that would be to the state of Minnesota. But I ran across St. Louis Parks, and it just, if you have a chance, please take a look at that, because I think it's very well written, and I think it incorporates everything that we're trying to accomplish in a very polished way.
Okay. Yeah, and to address the Minnesota State High School League, we had brought that up as a policy committee, and then there was some concern because that's only for high school. So we didn't want there to be a misunderstanding that this wouldn't also apply to middle school. But I like how St. Louis Park had said where applicable. I think that clarifies that. So.
Yep. Yeah, they also have a call out in here about respecting the safety and privacy of all students pursuant to District Policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records and state and federal privacy laws. So, yeah, it just feels like a really crisp policy. So,
yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, then we will bring that one back as well with your suggestions. So next up is policy 609, which is religion. So we've been, we have a whole policy tracker list now. Thank you, Becky, for pulling that together. And it says, you know, when we adopted it, when it was last revised. And so the policy committee is, you know, going through lots of them right now. So you will be seeing lots and lots popping up.
My only question on this one is there any change at all from our current policy? I tried having them up side by side and I didn't notice anything other than the dates, so that I just felt like maybe I wasn't seeing anything, or possibly this is just a review for timeliness.
I believe this one is just review. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you're correct. I think we put our, like you said, our current one up against MSBA's model policy, and there wasn't any significant changes.
Yeah.
Just in reviewing it, I did have a question, and I just don't understand. I don't understand what this means, so hopefully somebody can help me out. It's in, let's see here, Section 3, responsibility, and letter A. So it talks about the superintendent shall be responsible for ensuring that the study of religious materials, customs, beliefs, and holidays in the school district is in keeping with the following guidelines. And it then goes through 4 different guidelines, the third of which is the activity must not foster excessive governmental relationships with religion. I'm curious what that means.
Take that to mean that we can't be, we need to make sure that we are complying with separation of church and state. I don't have a great definition of what that would look like. You know,
that's what I was trying to pick. The other ones, I'm like, okay, I can understand that. I can understand. I got to that one, and I'm like, I don't think I understand what that means. So
yeah, I guess what I would suggest it probably means is something along the lines if we had some type of even if it were a curriculum project where we were working too closely with a religious organization to where it started to go beyond what was the purpose of being a part of that curricular activity. One example could be another example that, a lot of districts have faith-based groups come in as part of just being around for students if they want to talk to them. And sometimes that gets a little bit more into creating an open space for a faith-based group to actually do more than just being there for kids. And so I'm assuming that's where that excessive comes in, but yeah, I don't know other than that.
Okay, so I wasn't alone. I thought, boy, I must really need more caffeine or something, because I was not understanding that. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I read it as that it really is just making sure that there's a clear separation of church and state. Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay. The next policy is policy 616, school district system accountability. Any questions or comments on this one, Lisa?
My comment on this one is for the World's Best Workforce Committee. There's a school board member seat, and I don't know, my sense is that might not align with the outcome of our retreat and our commitment to governance. And that doesn't mean we don't go forward with the seat right now and clean it up as we go forward and get clarity on school board member roles, but that was the only thing. Because right now the board does get a briefing annually prior to the submission of the report to the state. But we just need to think about that going forward. Our role as a seat.
Yep, and we do have plans in the work sessions to be talking more now about the committees and what they're going to be looking like. So
yeah, I know, and that's
before this comes up for a second reading.
Weird things are happening at the same time. This is moving forward and that's moving forward, and I'm sure it'll get clarified and made consistent. But that's just something that jumped out at me.
Yep, I think that's a great comment. Anything else on this one? Okay. So policies for second reading, just one today. Policy 522, sex non-discrimination policy. So are there any more questions on this one? Otherwise, we can take a motion to move it to an action item for approval.
I'd move to make approval of policy 522 action item.
Second.
All right. Any comments on that? All right. All those in favor of moving policy 522 to an action item, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. I need to reload my meeting apparently. So next up is reports, beginning with the superintendent's report.
All right, unmuted and getting set up here. Okay, share screen. All right, can you see my slide that says high school? Perfect.
Yes. Yep.
All right, so I just wanted to give a quick update before we have everybody else come in. But with regard to high school, just so everybody knows that our student council at the high school is working hard to try and figure out what else can we do given the times. And so we do have a homecoming/spirit week kicking off. We're going to have royalty voting at the high school. They have dress-up days slated, and then Rona Olympics. So the royalty will be given a series of games to play and record themselves while they're doing it. And they're going to do some kind of voting. So once again, our kids are finding ways to figure out how to carry on with some of the things that are of normal things to do during the school year, even though we are still in the odd situation we are in. At the middle school, I wanted to give a little update. You're seeing pictures of brand new seating in the middle school auditorium, as well as what the stage is looking like. It's really looking nice in there. Very, very, very nicely done. So we're real excited about how sharp everything is looking in the middle school. And also at the middle school, we have brand new bleachers. So you can see how sharp those look. So very lucky that we have this facility for our middle school. It's definitely not something that many districts have, is a middle school with this type of facility. So this is fantastic. And then our elementary schools, before it got cold out, I just wanted to show that we got 3 kiddos there showing off their kindness in chalk. And this kind of fits with the high school presentation on mental health. And these kids, while they were out writing in chalk on how to be kind and drawing pictures around that, they were also then in their classrooms talking about how they support one another and are kind to one another and what they can do to help one another, particularly in this time. Also, just to give people a heads up, we are now full steam ahead with our iPads, K4 at the elementary level. And the feedback our principals have gotten is that our virtual conferences were a huge success. We had over 81% of our families sign up for conferences. And of those 81%, about 94% actually showed up. So it went really well. And in fact, the feedback that we're getting on conferences is maybe this is something we should be looking at doing even when we're not in COVID. It really helped parents out. One thing that's coming up, and this will be the last thing I talk about, is just our learning model and monitoring. As folks are watching numbers creep up, so are we. In fact, I had an hour-long meeting with the Department of Health today, along with all the superintendents in Dakota County, so that we can kind of be all on the same page, same understanding, because those people who've been watching and reading the news, there's quite a bit of turmoil in other districts right now with regard to this and sports and everything that goes along with it. But our numbers are trending upward per 10,000. So tomorrow our next number comes out. Last week we were at about a little over 24. I anticipate, based on what we heard today, that we're going to be somewhere close to 29, if not over 29 tomorrow. I'm fairly certain that we're going to hit 30 for the first time next Thursday. And the trending looks like we might stay in the 30s after that. So a couple things about that. The 30 mark is the starting point of when do we have these discussions. So I'll be setting up a meeting here with our regional response team in the next week so that we can come up with what the appropriate timeline is for when we would need to make a move if we do stay in the 30s. They do want us to be in the 30s for 2 to 3 weeks before we would make a transition. So those people that are timing this out right now and quickly looking at their calendars, that puts us right in the Thanksgiving break type area. And then if we were to go into distance learning, that would be the next move for secondary. Elementary would stay where they are. We would stay in that for a minimum of 2 weeks. Most districts are going actually 4 weeks so that they get 2 full cycles of that 14-day before they would anticipate coming back. So over the next week and a half, kind of like I put in the Radar update last week, as we learn more on a daily basis, we will we'll be letting folks know as far in advance as we can so families can plan for that. I did put in there this positive test percentage above 5%. The reason I put that in there is that according to the epidemiologist, once our positive test percentage sits at 5 or above 5, that means that the concentration levels are high enough that we need to be concerned about those weekly 14-day counts, because that means that our positive test rate is at a large enough scale that it's starting to impact our community. So we're at 5.5 this week, and it looks like we're going to probably stay at least that moving forward. So we are about, as we have been all the way along, we're about a week and a half behind what we see statewide. So this isn't coming as a surprise. And so, like I said, I do anticipate next week we'll be in the 30s for our first week. Between then and now, we'll be putting together what our plans look like. And we'll be making several announcements to families as we move along as to what that is probably gonna end up meaning for us moving forward. And that's all I have for my part of the report. I don't know if there are any questions on anything that I shared. Otherwise, we can move on to Jen Suber.
Right. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any.
Okay.
So for the bond summary, there was one project added this month, and that was the district-wide water cooler project. And that relates to being in COVID, we had to close off some of the water fountains. So we're looking at making sure that each one of our buildings has water coolers. Other than that, that was the only project that was added.
Do you want to hit student enrollment then, Jen?
Sure. So we added a document in there that gives a snapshot. So if you look at the October 1 of 2019 number compared to the October 1, 2020 number, there's a decrease of 129 students. And then we also include in there just looking at last year's first day enrollment compared to the last day of school enrollment. So, you know, each year we anticipate that that enrollment number will go down. The next piece of information in there is just kind of a heads up that for the adjustment in the 2021 revised budget, when we look at this on an adjusted pupil units basis, there'll be a reduction of 62. So that revised budget will be coming in December, but I just wanted to let you know that that enrollment number will be decreasing. And then on the second page, you know, something that we've been kind of looking at lately is the students that are open enrolled out and then the students that are open enrolled in, and just looking at where those students are choosing to go and then starting to analyze if there's any opportunities in bringing those kids back.
Thank you for pulling up all these numbers. Does anyone have any questions on these? Brian?
Hey, Jen, thanks so much for putting all this together. I'm curious, have you guys done any benchmark on the homeschool number, how that compares relative to other school districts? I'm just kind of interested in that one.
Yeah, we haven't necessarily compared it to other school districts, but that is something that we can start looking at. This was kind of the first step of the process. I mean, we definitely know this year we have more students homeschooling, so we saw a big increase in that, but we could definitely start looking at some neighboring districts to see what their numbers look like.
That's great. And just a follow up to that, in terms of, again, some of these other districts, I can't remember, this goes back a ways, if we ever surveyed or not. Do we ever ask folks when they're leaving what the reasons are so that we see a common theme, we'd be able to focus on it?
You know, I'll maybe let Missy speak to that because that's more in her area. So she's on here too.
Oh, cool.
Hello. You know, we don't currently, when students withdraw, we don't have that as a question that we ask. I do remember there was a point a while back, several years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where we did one night, we had a group of staff get together and we called families who were attending out of district just to kind of ask for more information about, you know, where they were going and why they had made that choice. And we did collect that at one point. I don't think we saw any real common threads when we did that, but it was a while back now that we did that.
That's that was my first year on the board.
How long ago was that?
That was 7 years ago that we did that.
Even longer than I thought.
Yeah, and the biggest theme that we had was simple logistics. Okay, folks live south of town. Parents work in Rochester, or parents work south of town. It's not convenient for me to go north of town. The other things that we ran into is just being such a geographically large district. We had students that were spending 45 minutes to an hour on the bus one way. So that was problematic at the time. And then boundaries with other districts. So situations where, we live on the Hastings side of the street, and all my daughter's friends live on the other side of the street, and they go to South Wash. So we went to South Wash. So those were some common ones. There are lots of different situations, but those were some very, very common ones that we ran across that I recall.
That's good information, Scott. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, and I think with COVID, it will be interesting, but because I know a lot of families, or some families, have gone to private school because it is in person 5 days a week. And so for their work schedules, that was what they needed. So reaching out to them and seeing if they'll be coming back when we go back to in person would be good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we set up a call bank, if I remember correctly, and then we did that right from the district office. We came in and called from the district office and talked to people. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. The other thing that jumps out at me of this withdrawals, though, is 31 having moved outside the district. And I think that speaks to, well, maybe it doesn't, but to me, it speaks to economic insecurity, and families, needing to make some tough choices there, and maybe even needing to move into multi-generational housing to resolve childcare and or cost and budgeting questions. Because that, I think I've heard the same thing, Kelsey, is 5-day in school for private education, non-public education. But that other number, that 31 moving, is a big chunk.
I did look specifically today too at the number the number of increase in homeschool students this year compared to last year, and it was up 40. So just that alone, I don't know, it's hard to know if or when they will come back, but that number was 40 more than last year at this time.
Yeah, and Hastings, from my own experience, has a pretty, large homeschool community, that there are a lot of homeschoolers here, but it would be interesting to compare that to other districts around. Also having numbers, so yeah, that's all. It would just be interesting. But I do think that, Abby is back in now because the distance learning was an option where she could be at home and then still kind of be a part of the district. And so I do wonder if long term, if those are things we start to look into as ways to bring homeschoolers into the district. Any other questions? Okay. Next up is policy committee. So Stephanie.
Sure. So as previously said in the meeting, we're kind of taking a more aggressive approach to getting all of the policies updated. We're meeting twice a month now. And for November, you can see that we're going to be looking at 601, 603, 606, 607, and 407. Which we're now getting into like the policies that have a lot of, every policy has substance, but these have a lot of inputs. So really digging into these to come up with some good products. I know Jen Reichel has been working diligently on that curriculum one. And then a few others on this list too, that she's been coming to the policy meetings to give us an outline of what she's been working on and get our feedback on that. We're looking at the equality policy, or excuse me, equity policy. So what we found out is there are quite a few different districts that have put out a policy. We don't have one in particular that is like an umbrella policy that will cover all the different specific equity policies that we have. So it's more of a statement, if you will, that we're backing this equity. We're supporting it, and then making sure that sorry, words are hard this night. That really, really hard. That it ties in all of the policies that are applicable to equity. And then 410, 524, the acceptable use one, we're looking at that one. 903A, which is that addendum to the visitors to schools, and then 806. So once we kind of get over this hump, we'll be able to go back into a more normal review cycle, but then we're going to be looking at what are the oldest policies that we have on the list that we need to tackle, and then working towards the more current ones, and then getting back onto hopefully a recurring schedule that it'll just be making those little changes as state statutes change, as policies change, as our district changes too. So that is our plan. It is a big tasking, but we're all pretty excited about it, right?
Any questions, Lisa?
I do have a question, and I'm just gonna, because it feels like you guys really aren't doing enough, and I feel like you should step up your game just a bit. I did send Kelsey a email this week as I was looking through the policies that we submitted for first reading, and got me thinking about our graduation requirements, which is policy 613. And right now, for a range of reasons, many of which are quite good, our graduation requirement policy doesn't align with the Minnesota State graduation policy. And we have a few extra requirements, and as we go into our budget adjustments, I think we've always bumped into this, and even under our existing high school day, we have pinch points, and we have many students, I don't know what many is, tens of students, that have to meet their graduation requirements through summer programming. And that tends to be a lot of the AVID, global language, and dual music students. And so I just want us, I would encourage the policy committee, when you have a moment, to talk about a 613 as a policy you'd like to look at, and that maybe we can discuss as a board. Because I'm not sure it serves people real well right now, but it'd be nice to have a discussion about it.
Yeah. And that one was last reviewed in 2006, which there's quite a few that 2006 is about the oldest as far as ones that haven't been reviewed yet. So that already falls into that needs to be reviewed, hasn't been reviewed in a long time category. But yep. So thank you for bringing it up with the board. So I know we talked about that at the work session as well, graduation requirements. So anything else for the policy committee? Okay. Next up is the facilities committee. So this one is mine. So if you remember last month, we talked about how we were going to come back with, they were working on a new list for long-term facility maintenance dollars. And so that was updated into an easy to read Excel document. So the committee spent some time going over that document and looking at what's currently not funded to see what remains a priority. And not funded means it's not covered by bond dollars so far, and it's not already lined up for long-term facility maintenance dollars. And so there was a new issue that came up at the high school, the boiler room valves. And so we don't have an estimate of what the actual cost will be. We do know that this will be a priority over the next 12 months. So that is a new addition to what we'll be looking at. As far as the list as a whole, Cam and Kyle are going to keep looking at that to kind of rank things and determine what needs to be done first. And then they'll be getting those costs and priorities put into a 10-year plan and really try to have this all planned out. And then the board's work in this will be determining, what uses bond dollars and what's going to use that long-term facility maintenance. And then we continue to talk about Todd Field and try to figure out what's going on and how we're going to kind of fix the damage. And so last month we had been hoping that we would be able to get some sort of a crash rated fencing. But if you recall, some of our bleachers are on MnDOT property. And so in order to put that fencing up, it would have to come in quite a ways, and it was going to make the fence very tall. And so the fencing company said they actually don't have something that would be able to meet our needs. So at this point, fencing didn't seem to be an option. And so what the facilities committee really talked about is that for now, the best option, is just to remove the damaged bleachers, as well as all of the bleachers in that section, and wait for the Department of Transportation study in a couple of years, thinking we don't want to invest a ton of money and have MnDOT tell us in 6 years we have to undo all of the work that we've just did. And so we wanted to make that section unseatable, and perhaps that would be by adding a privacy fence to block it off. And we do have some remaining insurance dollars that we could use to do that with. Scott.
Do we need to make the whole, are we making that section not for seating because it is not safe to sit on?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not stable, or as stable as we would like.
No, we're making it not available for seating because we can't resolve what if somebody came through that fence while people are seated there.
Yeah.
And that's what the idea of the crash rated fence was. So
the safety issue.
Just remove that. It's really the westernmost section of the bleacher on the visitor side. And then I think it's 3 segments of bleachers would remain.
Hey, maybe I'm not understanding here. So if we make the section that is damaged not available for seating, there's still going to be seating available on that visitor side, correct?
Yes.
But not in that portion of it.
Not in that portion. So what's special about that portion? Besides that it's damaged, how is it any more or less safe to sit in that section? Because if this were to happen again and someone were to have some type of an emergency and this were to repeat, they could just as easily veer to the right and come into that section directly underneath the booth, or further to the right and hit that section of stands. So if it's damaged and it's unusable, that's fine. But I don't know that the comment that, well, we can't put people there because a car came through there. It's like, well, the car could come through anywhere along on that entire section. If an incident were to happen.
I think the idea is that we know that a car came through that section, and to put people back in that exact same spot where we know a car did potentially opens us up when we don't have a resolution. And so that's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay, that I can understand, but I don't know that it's a safety thing. I don't know that if the bleachers are unstable, it's a safety thing. If it's well, we can't sit here because a car came through, I guess we can phrase it however we want. I just have a hard time swallowing that one.
Yeah, I think it is.
Can't make it safe if a car came
through
again
in that area.
I see what you're saying, Scott, and you're right. I mean, there's a degree to which it's a terminology question. So it's a question between safety and liability. But I would say that the place where that car did come through, with it being uniquely aligned to
Eddy Street,
First Street, or Eddy Street. Thank you. The speed at which it came through would be a little bit hard to achieve. So I am not dismissing your point at all, but there is some unique characteristic about that spot, combined with the fact that it happened, and some of the layout. And in reality, we talked about this too, there's just not, we can accommodate the amount of seating that would remain would accommodate visitors, because there's so few probably less than 6 events a year where we get a really high visitor turnout.
Right, right. I guess my only point was a car came through that section. That's true. A car could come through anywhere along there. They could be turning onto Highway 55 and veer off to the right and come through the fence. I mean, that's all I'm all for. If we need to close it for liability reasons or whatever the case may be, that's fine. And I'm also all for waiting until we get a little better solution and we get some idea what's going to happen with the state of Minnesota, because I would feel very bad if we spent a lot of money doing something, putting in stanchions or putting in, some type of barrier, and then the state of Minnesota comes in with their project and tears it all out and we get to do it again.
This is probably the smallest cost option that we have with the highest priority area being dealt with. I guess that's the way to look at it.
Yep. And I would agree that probably is the most likely, just given its proximity to Eddy Street.
Right.
And you figure that if someone comes in at another part of the fence, they're far less likely to be coming head on in the same way that they have been. And so how far into the fencing will they go? I mean, there's people smarter than me on that, but
yeah, actually, I think we got lucky with the person who did hit it in terms of damage to that they cleared. They were going fast enough to clear everything. Now they would probably not agree with that, but the damage to the bleachers and such, and anyone sitting in them going slower and breaking through the fence would potentially be higher.
Yeah. So really waiting for that study to be done so that we can figure out long term, what the safety looks like.
Right.
But
yeah, so some kind of netting or something a la NFL stadiums with their seating right now, something along that line is going to go up over this, or what's it going to look like?
That's what
it's not going to be a Menards blue tarp though.
No.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, they are royal blue, so I guess maybe that would work.
Do you want to sponsor an NHL type tarp?
Make a nice sign,
with the Scott Gergen.
No,
I
do not.
I wanted to give you the chance to be that first sponsor. Okay.
All right. So, any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing anything. But I also, there we go. Self-funded insurance committee.
The notes got dropped in there today. Jenny Berg provides a summary of the meeting, and it actually goes out to all district employees because it's really most relevant to the people that the product serves. We had anticipated that the previous year would end even or maybe with a slight reduction in our reserve, but because access to healthcare was significantly constrained through the last quarter of the year, that did not prove to be the case, but that was an aberration and we don't anticipate that continuing. So the amounts are in the notes, but the final conversation was around wellness and committing to another year of both Wellbeats and Omada, which they're kind of a virtual wellness component of the healthcare, and sort of reinvigorating that as people move to more indoor spaces going into the winter, and just finding different ways to engage in wellness. No decisions at this meeting, just a update.
Yeah, I think Jenny had a typo in here too, because our cost to funding ratio for health insurance after our September claims was 88%, and our approximate goal at the end of the year is, I believe, 90%, and she has 40% in here. But bottom line, health insurance, very healthy balance. We are well above our policy for for health insurance. Dental insurance, same idea, very healthy. Our claims were in September were very high, but that is not a surprise, as they're high at the beginning of the year every year, and this year probably even more so as our dental clinics started opening back up.
Okay. Any questions?
It was interesting to see the claims though in the March timeframe, because they were on an upward climb, and then we hit March and they just went flatline because everything was shut down. Nobody was going to the doctor. So
yeah, I went to the eye doctor today, and with a mask on, it just kept fogging up the machine every time, and it just looked blurry. Everything looked blurry. It'll be interesting to see how this kind of affects long term. But any questions for the self-funded insurance committee? All right, I'm not seeing anything, so we will. I need to reload the meeting. We'll move on to the action items, beginning with the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay. And the consent agenda includes, just for people watching, the change orders, bills payable, personnel report, donations, and adding an HR position. And all of those links can be found in Board Book if you would like to see them. So any discussion on this? All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next up, items for individual action, beginning with contracts. So first up is the HESA contract. So.
All right, so for both of these, we can ask Jen if she has anything to add with them, but for both the HESA contract and the next one, the health services contract, we were able to come to tentative agreements with those two groups. And so we're ready for the board to approve both of those contracts.
Jen, do you have anything to add? Otherwise, we'll take a motion to approve.
I don't, just that they were settled within the kind of confines that we were given by the board that were used with all the other contracts.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to approve the HESA contract and the health services contract?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next is the technology set aside. And so we talked about this at the board meeting, at the work session, but do you want to talk about it anymore, Superintendent McDowell?
Yeah, just to remind the community, what we're talking about here is part of our budget adjustment process. We're asking that the board, or our recommendation is that the board suspend setting aside the $100,000 in technology money to a committed account. The reason for this is we have a little over $900,000 in our committed account for technology. And because appropriate expenditures allowed us to spend CRF dollars on technology items as part of this adjustment process, it makes sense for us to utilize those CRF funds for the technology purchases and not set aside the $100,000 into that committed fund for this year. And so we're asking that the board make that decision tonight.
And so since we did do the survey and there was some confusion about this, this is setting aside this money for this year, just making sure that is well understood, and not that we're not setting aside tech money.
That's correct.
Yep.
I'll move to that discussion point that we not use that $100,000 that needs to go to that account because there's 900,000 plus in now.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion or comments on this one?
Just one question. If we change our minds on this one as we go through the budget adjustment process, am I correct in assuming that we could reverse this if we choose to?
Yep.
Okay.
You can bring an action item to reverse it at any point. We just can't not, because you voted on it originally, we need to vote to have it not happen.
Right. I figured as much. I just wanted to make it clear that if we need to adjust, I wasn't sure if there was some accounting. Sometimes there's some wacky accounting rules about how and when you can do things. So
I just wanted to have full transparency if we weren't going to put this money in committed funds.
Right. Agreed.
Yep. Okay. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of setting aside the $100,000 in technology funds for the 2021 fiscal year, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next is the fund balance designation.
Yeah, so this one as well. So for people that are watching, as part of our budget adjustment process, we are requesting that essentially this is more of a transparency move, the way that it is, because the dollars in the general budget are approved by the board already. And so it would, if we were short, it would come out of the fund balance. And so essentially what we're asking the board to do is acknowledge that we would like to officially designate $100,000 to be used as part of this adjustment process. Again, this is really just to try and be as transparent as possible, so that when we got down the road and had the conversation of why is the fund balance $100,000 different than what we thought, it's because of this motion and vote to officially designate that as part of the adjustment process.
And again, I think I know the answer here, but I just want to make sure as we go through the budget adjustment process, I fully expect that this number is going to change.
I think that it
could, or we have that option.
Absolutely. Yeah, this, like the other one, as we talked, way back, we're just trying to get as much of this out in the open as soon as possible so that people see what we're doing and it doesn't seem like a last minute, okay, we're going to do this. And so we're just trying to be transparent with folks on these moves.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that because I think our adopted budget, and thanks for saying that this was just for transparency's sake, because obviously any deficit, comes out of the general fund. That's how that works. And our adopted budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, I'm just looking at it quick. I think we were at a place where the general fund was going to be withdrawn by about $480,000. Am I looking in the wrong line? Or was it it was out of unassigned?
Right.
It was like I'm sorry, I was in the wrong line. Almost 1.7 million.
Yeah.
So, again, just for community perspective, there was a big scrub of the 2021, our existing, we are in it now budget year. And this is where now basically what I'm hear you saying is we're looking at probably that number in revised being 100,000 and other things having been adjusted notably. So I want people that are watching, and I want myself to understand that it's moving from the budget we started, adapted budget at almost 1.7 to 100,000. And then to Scott's point, what I had to keep reminding myself as I was reviewing for tonight's meeting is these actions are for the year that we're in. It's just a sort of, as we move forward to the revised budget, which Jen has already said we'll see in December, this is that. It's telling people partly how we move from here to there. this number of students enrolled and these other changes. You know, that more robust conversation about budget adjustments for years going forward and how much of the problem is solved out of the fund balance and how much of the problem is solved out of the technology designation for future years. That's a discussion yet to be had. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's really accurate. And that brings up, you reminded me, if people weren't able to see the work sessions or the slide decks that we've used, those work sessions are on the HCTV website, and all the documents that we've been using, we have posted to the school district website so that people can see what you're referring to, Lisa, in terms of what the difference in shifting has looked now for the last 6 weeks as we work through this process.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other comments? Otherwise, we're still waiting for a motion to do this one.
So moved.
Second.
All right. So any more discussion? No, I'll ask that officially. All right. All those in favor of designating $100,000 from the fund balance, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, same sign. Okay, motion carries. So last up is the policy 522 that we had the second reading of earlier, the sex non-discrimination policy. So do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Are there any comments, questions, any discussion? That's the word. Okay, all those in favor of adopting policy 522, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye. Oppose, same sign. Motion carries. So last up is just looking at our future meetings. So we do have a lot coming up. There is a board work session next week already, as well as a policy committee meeting on November 10th. And then if you go online again on Board Book or on our website, Superintendent McDowell.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to have the discussion now, but I just want to acknowledge before the meeting started, we've got a conflict with that November 10th budget adjustment work session. And what I thought that I heard from folks was that way back when you put the calendar together originally, we were maybe thinking of doing that work session before the November 18th board meeting. And so is that something that the board is still interested? Because I think, I know that for sure we have one conflict with folks on the 10th. Maybe two conflicts, looks like. All right, so we've got two board member conflicts for the 10th, so I don't think that one's going to work.
Can we do something maybe 5 o'clock-ish?
On the
How does that work for everyone?
I'm on call that day. I'm not available at all.
On the 18th?
3 board members that can't make the 10th.
On the 18th or the 10th?
The 18th.
Oh,
yeah, now the 18th. So before the regular meeting. So coming an hour early to do the budget adjustment work session and then going into the regular board meeting from there.
The 18th.
So would the 8th?
Yeah, not the 10th.
The 18th work.
Bob, do you have any concerns about putting the work session out until the 18th?
In terms of needing to
in terms of just the process of like coming to a budget adjustment, because
right.
then the next one is the 2nd.
That's a good point, only because that's
then we go right into Thanksgiving. I think I don't have my I have my phone. I have a calendar in front of me.
You know, I guess we would have that. What it's going to do is it's going to, it could impact us, the ability for people to make any initial decisions if we wanted to do that. Because as I'm kind of playing this out, if we were to get to the spot if we were on the 18th and I were to say to the board, okay, I need direction as to what do you want to put on the agenda for the 18th, all of that timing would have been thrown off. So I think that's a good point, because it would be really tough for us to get stuff onto the agenda, except for it would be at the last minute. And then you're not going to have any feedback on it if there was potential feedback. So I guess maybe then we'd be looking at what does the week of, are there other, I mean, yeah.
Like the 12th?
Yeah, because we can't do Wednesday. I guess would the 12th work for people? Or the 9th?
I am not available Thursdays and Mondays until after the 16th of December. Unless, well, because it'll be over Zoom, so I could do earlier, but yeah, those are really tough days for me.
I know nobody likes Fridays, but would like Friday the 13th work?
Like, I'm getting my calendar brought up because I still calendar, but doesn't should we be worried about that? Doing something on the Friday the 13th?
Maybe.
Yeah, any of those alternate dates work for me that week. So yep. I defer to others on this one.
Yep, I can also do any of the alternate dates.
Yeah, those would all work for me. I'd prefer to stay off of Fridays, but
we can't do,
or at least be done by 7.
Stephanie, did you say we can't do Mondays or Thursdays?
No, I have obligations in the evening starting at 6, so I could do before then, and then I just have to make sure that I'm out by 6.
We want to do well, I guess then it's either a 5 o'clock on Monday. Thursday would be tough. We've got a negotiations meeting on Thursday, but I guess we could do that. No, that'll be tough to do that Thursday.
You're talking about the 9th, right?
Yeah, Monday the 9th. Could we do that at 5?
Yeah, that'll work for me.
And just plan on an hour.
Okay. Scott, work for you? Where's Becky?
Becky, can you make that change then?
Well, wait, let's see if Becky, did you say you can do it on the 9th?
I'll make it work.
Okay.
5 o'clock.
Will that work, Becky Beisel? 5 on the 9th?
I'll make it work. It's better than the Tuesday.
Which one is becoming the 9th? Which one are we moving?
The 9th.
The one that's on the 10th. The budget adjustment.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
5 o'clock, plan on an hour.
Yep.
Okay.
With the goal of potentially being able to say some number of things would be on the agenda for the 18th.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I will just say, and maybe this just is a drip, but it also sounded like there was some availability for people on the 18th prior to the school board, so we can also see where we come out of. If we stage something, we need another hour on the 18th to prepare us for, the 9th of December.
Yep. Correct.
Just hold that in our brain that we might still have something there at 5 or 6 and move the board meeting to 7.
Okay.
I have nothing to do, so I'm so happy to see you people. The rest of you are like, oh my God. I can't do one more thing.
Well,
I've been on Zoom for 9 hours today.
Going through the process, it takes time. So I'm all for having options.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Scott. The more that we are ready to designate some time for it, the better the resolution will be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
All right.
Anything else?
Okay. Well, Becky has already updated the calendar invite.
Okay.
Thank you, Becky.
Wow, that's efficient.
Do we want to put then a budget adjustment work session optional on the 18th?
5 o'clock.
Or 6 and move the meeting?
We can hold it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 5, just hold
5 o'clock.
Hold a 5 o'clock budget and a 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Board meeting. Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Wow, good work. Got through a lot.
Right. Yeah, we did.
And I just would like to be completely clear, I was absolutely teasing. The policy committee is working their tails off.
Yeah.
I sensed the sarcasm. All right. Well,
great.
with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
I assume there was a second. Okay. All those in favor?
That's what we need is the thing to die for lack of a second. Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Good night. Be well.
Yeah, have a great night.